What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And guess what? Today I am going to be talking about the most recent 3 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 2. And man, is there a lot to talk about here. These episodes offer up some pretty shocking reveals, and also what I would argue is some of the most deep and meaningful storytelling in all of Star Wars. So, without wasting any more time, let's jump right into episode 11, Metamorphosis. Right off the bat, this episode answers the question that I asked at the end of my previous video. Where is Nala Se? Is she safe? Is she alright? Well, we learn that she's being held in confinement because of her refusal to comply with the Empire's demands that she assist them in their cloning operations. We also have it confirmed to us that the location seen at the end of the previous season, where Nala Se is now being detained, is actually Mount Tantus, which, if you didn't know, was Palpatine's storehouse for all of his special cloning projects in the Heir to the Empire trilogy. Which is pretty cool. It's always nice to see elements of Legends being reincorporated into the canon timeline. After reaching their limit with Sid, the Bad Batch reluctantly agreed to pull off one last mission for her to investigate a crashed derelict transport ship, which they discover is carrying a creature that we soon learn is a baby Zillo Beast. Now, let's talk about that for a second. People were theorizing the Zillo Beast would make its return this season, but I had trouble believing that, until suddenly they decided to pick up a plot thread which was left hanging over a decade ago. If you didn't know, the Zillo Beast was first introduced in an arc towards the end of the Clone Wars Season 2, an arc that ended with the Zillo Beast unfortunately being killed, but with Palpatine ordering it to be cloned because its scales were lightsaber resistant. The implication being that he wanted to create lightsaber resistant armor for the clone army when they were to eventually execute Order 66. As we know, this never came to pass, and I had assumed that Palpatine's efforts of cloning the beast were ineffective, because in the book Thrawn Alliances, Thrawn and Anakin Skywalker come across a facility in the unknown regions where droids and clone armor are being built out of a material called cortosis, which is not only lightsaber resistant, but which can also cause the blade to dissipate on contact. However, Thrawn and Anakin were able to destroy the facility, thus depriving Palpatine of that resource. But as we can clearly see in this episode of The Bad Batch, the beast was successfully cloned, and Palpatine is still trying to use it for a malicious purpose, which as of yet remains unknown. I'm guessing that in the early stages of the war, cloning the beast was damn near impossible, which is why Palpatine moved on to mining cortosis. But once those plans were foiled, he reverted back to cloning the beast, which was possible at that point, but the war was quickly drawing to a close, and Order 66 was in the near future, meaning that creating new armor for the clones wasn't really an option. Although most of the Jedi have been eradicated at this point, having lightsaber and blaster-proof armor for any army is pretty useful, especially for the stormtroopers who aren't as well trained for combat as the previous clone army was. This is just me trying to make sense of all of it. There is every possibility that Dave Filoni is pulling a classic move of his and straight up retconning Thrawn Alliances, which I'll be pretty pissed about because I adore the new canon Thrawn books. But if the newest episode of The Mandalorian is anything to go off of, the destruction of Thrawn's character in canon is already in motion. Another reveal I was not expecting in this episode was that Lama Su is still alive. Yes, the last time we saw him was in Season 1, after Vice Admiral Rampart told him he was essentially useless to the Empire, and left him alone in a room with 2 of Crosshair's squad members pointing a machine gun and a flamethrower at him. Naturally, I assumed that he was toast, quite literally. But now I understand the story purpose for his survival, as he arrives on Mount Tantus and informs our apparent new antagonist, Dr. Hemlock, that the one way they may be able to get Nalase to comply with them is by using Omega, the one person she actually cares for. That, combined with the Havoc Marauder being spotted at the location of the Zillo Beast's rampage, strongly suggests that the Bad Batch's cover has finally been blown. The Empire knows they're alive and will be actively pursuing them from this point on. Right from the beginning of Episode 12, The Outpost, I knew it would be good, as Kevin Kiner's trademark droning synth music underscores the opening scene, which reintroduces us to everyone's favorite character, Crosshair. In this episode, Crosshair is sent on a mission to a desolate ice planet, accompanied by one of the new most hateable characters in all of Star Wars, Lieutenant Nolan, who reminded me quite a bit of Pong Krell from the Clone Wars. With his complete distaste for the clones and utter disregard for their lives. While on this mission, Crosshair meets a clone commander named Mayday, who symbolically and visually represents all that's left of the clones. His armor is extremely damaged, barely being held together by bandages and different pieces of fabric. Even the voice modulator inside his helmet is damaged, as we can hear in the scenes when he's talking to Crosshair. Throughout this entire episode, Crosshair finally comes to the realization that his loyalty to the Empire was misplaced. The clones on this planet have been provided no aid, despite the Empire claiming they would be. Lieutenant Nolan gives Mayday no time to mourn the loss of his fallen brothers before sending him and Crosshair on what is essentially a death mission to retrieve stolen equipment from insurgents, which they learn is nothing more than armor for the soldiers that will replace them. As Nolan said at the beginning of the episode, to the Empire, the clones are nothing more than used equipment that has long outserved its purpose. Shortly thereafter, an avalanche occurs which traps Crosshair and Mayday. We already knew that Crosshair was willing to repay loyalty where he feels it's owed. We saw this at the end of Season 1 with him saving Omega's life after she had saved his. But in this episode, after Mayday saves his life twice, he goes back on what he said earlier in the episode about not wanting to carry dead weight, and helps Mayday limp all the way back to the outpost, where their replacements look on and do nothing, as Lieutenant Nolan approaches Crosshair and confirms to him all that he had feared. They are all expendable, and not just the clones. We saw in the previous episode that the Empire made sure to eradicate all witnesses to the Zillo Beast's rampage. Interestingly enough, Crosshair actually agreed with and defended the Empire's methods at the end of Season 1.
They destroyed an entire city.
They did what needed to be done. Camino, Rex, the Republic. That time is over. The Empire will control the entire galaxy, and I am going to be a part of it.
Back then, he probably would have agreed with Nolan, but after experiencing firsthand the injustices facing him and all the other clones, he snaps and kills Nolan, his defection from the Empire finally complete. And as per usual with these Crosshair-focused episodes, the visual storytelling on display was beautiful. At the beginning of the episode, Crosshair looks into the sky and sees a creature flying overhead, an ice vulture. Mayday tells Crosshair that they're vicious creatures, but he admires them because they find a way to survive. At the end of the episode, while Crosshair is on his hands and knees, he sees the shadow of the ice vulture flying overhead, reflecting how, while Crosshair is vicious, ruthless, and kind of messed up, we still continue to root for him because we respect his ability to survive. At the end of the episode, Crosshair wakes up inside Mount Tantus, and one of the doctors seen in the previous episode tells him that if he cooperates, he may just survive. I think it's fairly evident at this point that the Empire have realized he lied about the Bad Batch not surviving the destruction of Tapoka City, so they will either try to extract information from him as to their whereabouts, or more likely, they will use him as bait to draw the Bad Batch out in order to capture Omega. I've seen a lot of people saying that Crosshair's episodes are the most compelling of the series, and I agree with that, but not because the Bad Batch are bad characters. I thoroughly enjoy all the episodes featuring the Bad Batch. In a world such as our own that is facing adversity on practically a daily basis, it's inspiring to see characters navigating a world quite similar to our own and constantly doing the right thing in the face of adversity. But none of us are perfect, and that's why I think more of us connect with Crosshair. That's not to say the Bad Batch are perfect, because they most certainly aren't. But just like us, Crosshair is extremely flawed. For this entire series, he has been aimlessly attempting to cling on to some semblance of purpose, and in the process, he's made a lot of bad decisions. Most of us haven't brutally slaughtered innocent civilians, but none of us go through life without making questionable choices or doing things we regret. That's why Crosshair's such a compelling character, and why finally seeing him stand up and do the right thing is such a powerful moment. It's a reminder that, despite how flawed we are, there is some good deep down in all of us. Although this episode was fantastic and I absolutely loved it, I do have one problem with it, and that is that I wish we got more time with Crosshair. If the episode was 10 to 20 minutes longer, or if we just got an extra episode of Crosshair witnessing the Empire's mistreatment of the clones. Because as is, he's only in 2 episodes of this season so far. Now, those episodes are easily the best of the season and arguably the best of the entire series, but some more time spent with him could have done a little bit more to inform the decision he makes at the end. Episode 13, Pabu, was a nice change of pace for the series. We see the Bad Batch are now hanging out more with Fee, who we learned back in the 5th episode is a much more trustworthy ally than Sid, who they have attempted to cut all ties with. Fee takes the Bad Batch to her home, Pabu, and it was just wholesome to see them finally welcomed somewhere with open arms instead of being shot at the second they land. Omega admits that she never thought of a life aside from being on the run, because that's what they've been this entire series. Fugitives, mercenaries for hire, going from one untrustworthy person to the next. But now they're somewhere where they may actually be able to find peace. But of course, the peace doesn't last, because a tsunami blows through, and in a very intense scene, quite similar to the finale of Season 1 with their escape from Kamino, the Bad Batch are forced to deal with a situation they can't fight their way out of. Their goal is purely survival and ensuring the safety of those around them. The tsunami wipes out most of Lower Pabu, but the Bad Batch know what it's like to have their home destroyed, and they offer to help the people rebuild. They're finally opening up and becoming a part of a community again after being on their own for so long. Overall, this was just a very charming episode in my opinion, but I have a bad feeling about this, because as we know, the Empire comes for everyone eventually, and now that the Bad Batch are officially one of their targets again, I'm afraid the people of Pabu may get caught in the crossfire. This was a pretty great set of episodes, and funnily enough, a lot of people have been saying that these past few Bad Batch episodes have been far superior to the first few episodes of The Mandalorian Season 3. Now, I only watched the first episode of Mando Season 3, and I was not impressed with what I saw, but I do have a general idea of what happens after that point, and man, does it seem like the creative team are running out of ideas. The storytelling in that show isn't nearly as meaningful as this show. The next 3 episodes I talk about will be the last of this season, which I am simultaneously excited and sad about, because this show has brought me a lot of joy over the past few months. But you guys let me know, what are your thoughts on the most recent 3 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 2? Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you disagree with them? Just whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.